The People's Platform.
Good evening and welcome to the People's Platform. I'm Niresh Aliyatambi on behalf of the Newsfirst team. System change, system change, system change. That's one of the key themes that Sri Lankans have been shouting about for the last 3 years or so. And now we are, as a nation, in the midst of this system change. We've changed our president. Our old parliament is no more, and we will have a new parliament with perhaps 100 or 150 new members. We'll be having all new local government bodies as well in a few months' time. So we're setting up, or the nation is setting up, the political side of it. But is that enough? What about the rest of us? What is our duty? How do we affect change in society and within ourselves? And to discuss this very deep subject, we have with us this evening an expert in this, Dr. Gamini Hewawasam. Welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. Gamini. Let me try to introduce you. Your resume is long and very distinguished. You were born and grew up in Sri Lanka.
Very happily, yes.
Yes, and then you started your work life in Sri Lanka as well, in airlines.
Yes, Air Lanka.
Air Lanka, yes. And then you did a short stint in the Middle East, again in airlines.
Alitalia Airlines.
Yes. And then you went off to the United States.
For my higher studies.
Yes. And you ended up with first a BSc in aviation management, but then you moved towards the leadership side.
Correct.
And you've got an MBA and then a PhD in global leadership from Benedictine University in Illinois.
Correct.
And now you are, well, you're many things, but let me describe you as a leadership coach and mentor. And you are an official member of the Forbes Coaches Council, and you are heading several companies which you have founded. One is ManoLead, which is the Center for Action Research on Introspective Leadership. And another is INT Terminal, which you are the CEO and founder president. That's in the USA. And you have an engineering firm here in Sri Lanka, Fine Finish Engineering, which you are the president and CEO.
Correct.
So you do visit from Illinois, which is your home now. You visit Sri Lanka several times per year. So you see the different cultures, USA, Sri Lanka and others, and you've seen the changes which are happening in Sri Lanka.
Yes.
Now, tell us right now, what do we as Sri Lankans need to do to change ourselves? Because it's not just that we need to change our politicians. We need to change ourselves, our society.
Very correct. We need to change ourselves. That's number one. And earlier you introduced this program calling System Change. I think the system change should start within ourselves rather than we focus the outside system. What I hear from mostly the Sri Lankan, they are talking about system that is not within them. They are talking a system which is in outside. So I would like to reverse that a little bit. If we could identify the system within ourselves, I think then it will lead for us to change the system which is in outside. But you have to start within yourself, understanding what system you are talking about. Basically, paying attention to yourself. Once you're paying attention to yourself, you will get an opportunity to understand your own system. Then we can move to the system which is outside.
Interesting thoughts indeed. And we were having a chat before the program, and a lot of what you have learned is from the teachings of Lord Buddha.
Yes, I'm so blessed to actually learn and practice the Dhamma. I was born here, and I went to Dhampasal, and I went to a grade school over here, and I learned many Buddhist teaching and many Buddhist techniques, but I blame myself not following them properly, not understand them correctly. So what happened to me was, when I started doing my research for my PhD, I was focused on leaders and mindfulness, which comes the word from Satipatthana, how it impact on leaders' decision making. During that research, I was able to understand and practice the right Buddha's teaching on the term of Satipatthana. So I was fortunate to do the research with many gurus, and the techniques and the advice I received, I apply to myself. So earlier you indicated that I'm running a few companies in different countries. The reason for me to do that is this teaching, how I apply to myself. So that's the beauty.
So it's self-discipline.
It's more into self-discipline, and you try to understand yourself, because most of us, we try to fight with outside stimuli. Rather than fighting with outside stimuli, we're trying to understand what is happening within us. That's why I indicated that the system within ourselves is more important than the system which is we are talking about outside.
So mindfulness, introspection, these would be terms which could describe what you're talking about.
Correct. Actually, the mindfulness and introspection is the similar words. Mindfulness coming from the Pali word Satipatthana. Actually, in Pali, Satipatthana means combination of three words: Sati, Upa, and Thana. Sati is attention. You can bring many English words for Sati. Alertness, attention, that's the Sati. And then Upa is internal. We have a Pali word Upa and Apa. Upa is internal. Thana is to place. Thana is to place. So when you combine these three words, Pali words, Satipatthana is introspection, not the mindfulness. So I'll tell you actually what happened, how this mindfulness came to play. We were British colony. In 1882, if I can remember properly, one of the British scholar named Dr. Rice Davis, he came to Sri Lanka and learned the Buddhist teaching, Buddha's teaching. And then he's the English-speaking person, and these Buddha's teachings were in Pali. And then we had Sri Lankan who talked in Sinhalese. So we have three different languages. So then at the end, the Dr. Rice Davis understood this teaching with the translation of Pali and English to English, Pali, Sinhala to English. Then he came the word mindfulness. And then with that word, he created the Pali English dictionary, and which is in UK right now,
right.
1882. And from that day until today, everyone in the West and the East, we use Satipatthana as mindfulness. But if you go back and understand what this real meaning of Satipatthana, as I explained earlier, the close English word for that is introspection.
Interesting indeed. Now, you work a lot with global leaders, mainly in the corporate sector,
Correct.
also academia. But while it's important for leaders to be introspective about themselves so that they can set their minds in order, this is something that we can all practice, isn't it?
Of course, yes. This is not related to one particular discipline, but especially I'm coming from a corporate world, and that's why I try to put this teaching into the practices and try to help myself and other leaders how they can play with their organization. because especially in the business world, the word stress is very familiar.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
So this introspection, the result, if you follow it, the technique properly, you will find the calmness. So even right now in the West, psychotherapy, what they're trying to use is how we can overcome stress, or we call it stress management. You name big organization, they have a workshop to help their leaders, their workers to overcome the stress. So in order to overcome the stress, you have to understand what is happening within you. So if you go through these mindfulness techniques or satipatthana techniques, that will help you to calm down or release the stress or reduce the stress.
Now, that's very interesting. You use the word and you focused on the word stress. And in my view, 22 million Sri Lankans have been under enormous stress for the last 2 to 3 years, because we've had a country which went into bankruptcy. We had political leaders who had been overwhelmingly voted in with the full confidence of millions of people, who suddenly had done everything wrong that you could even think of, all the wrong decisions, and all of a sudden we were in totally uncharted waters. A nation which didn't have fuel, you just didn't know whether you could get to school tomorrow, or what your future would be. So a totally stressed out nation. And this stress is still there because we haven't actually dealt with this trauma.
Correct. I think I really would like to highlight here for myself, what I feel here is this country is not bankrupt. I know many people claim, they were so rushed to claim it as bankrupt, that because we were failed to understand who we are. If we can give opportunity for ourselves to understand who we are, I don't think people will agree saying we are not bankrupt. That's number one.
You're absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Number two, what I think here is we always go and fight with what we see, what we hear, which is outside stimuli. Again, because of that, we're going to react so fast. And then the stress popping up. If we can find a way how to manage or deal with outside stimuli consciously, not unconsciously. Most of the stuff, what we do, what we talk, is happening unconsciously. As an example, let's say we both are getting into a fight and you say something very bad to me. And what my reaction is to either put you down or say something bad in return. But if I can process what I heard before I make any action, I think I will make educated judgment before I react unconsciously. That is what is this mindfulness is. How do you see yourself clearly? So going back to the last 2 years, the way that you explained, my question is, did we see ourselves clearly?
Not at all. I think we saw ourselves through the financial eyes of our political leaders, and who were guided by the ratings agencies and the creditors and so on. But we didn't actually look around and see what type of country we had.
What is applied in US, we cannot apply directly in Sri Lanka. The credited agents, you have different name. I'm not going to fight with the economics or any financial institute. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm trying to tell people is, well, this Sri Lanka is a unique country. You cannot find this country anywhere in the world.
Absolutely.
And you explained earlier, you indicated that I'm an airline person. Yes, I am. I have been to more than 100 countries. I got the opportunity to see what is happening around the world. I have lived in different countries too, but I have not seen a country like this. Unfortunately, what is happening here is most of us, have not seen that beauty. The beauty has to see within yourself first. Once you start seeing the beauty itself, then you can apply to the outside. It's not happening here. So we need to find a way. Yes, system change, new government comes. So what we're trying to figure it out. How are we going to advise, how are we going to guide, how are we going to educate the young people? It's easy for us to educate young people rather than going to fight with the elderly person. Because if you're trying to teach these new stuff to a elderly person, they need to unlearn first in order to gather the new stuff. But if you are going to talk to a younger person, they do not have much stuff to unlearn. They are open for the new ideas. As an example, I was doing my research in US with 26 global corporate leaders for 3 months. I was talking to them about the importance of mindfulness practices, the techniques, and how we can apply into leadership. Those peoples are from different type of religions. They are Jewish, they are Muslims, they are Christians, different people, but none were Buddhist. They received this message so overwhelmingly. They got it. That because they didn't hear any religious part into this. This is just pure teaching of Buddha without putting into any religious bucket. So they were so keen to get it. But for us as a Sri Lankan, what's the problem here is we have something, our mind is such loaded with incorrect balonies. If we can find a way to remove them or unlearn them, then we can get this clear message of Buddha's teaching. I do not categorize it as any type of a religion. I categorize that's the way you see yourself.
It's a philosophy of life.
It's a philosophy of life, it's a psychology of life, it's a way of life, and it's applied to everyone, human and the nature. It's applied to everything. It's such a beautiful thing which is existing in this country, and that's why we need to tell the world. Actually, Sri Lanka definitely can help the world. Look at what is happening in Middle East. Look at what is happening in Europe. Look at what is happening in South America. Not even South America, in US. Because we are, day by day, we are going away from the reality. Reality should be one. The reality for you and for me has to be one, which is the truth. If we can find a way to understand this and educate our own people, I think Sri Lanka can be an example to the entire world.
Now, in practical terms, you spoke of unlearning. How would you suggest that be done? Because now, you know our education system.
Yes.
You went through school here. You are basically told by your teachers to sit there, don't question, just take down and pass your exams. That's not an education. It's a piece of paper, a certificate at the end of it.
It is.
It doesn't necessarily teach you about life, about yourself. And even religion, we have so many great religions, but we tend to focus on ritual rather than the philosophy of it. So how do you, now you know what Sri Lankan society is. Let's take a youngster just out of school. How do you actually get that person to start thinking, to be introspective, to unlearn all these baloney, as you said, which has already cluttered up their minds?
I think the unlearning is one of the most difficult part a human is facing, because I have the experience when you come to this particular subject. I did it because what I learned from here in Sri Lanka, actually back in US, I did unlearn. Then only I was able to get the new teaching or proper teaching or the correct teaching. That's how it happened. But answer to your questions, what I feel here is there's a big difference between do good and be good. Take the youngsters. You at home, your mother and father and the elders, they always tell you, do good, and do good, because that's your child. You wanted to make sure that they are doing the right thing, and then you're instructing them, do good, do good, do good. You go to school, your teacher comes and say, hey, you have to do this good, do good, do good, do good. You go to temple or a church or a mosque or Cowell, then what you hear is do good, do good, do good. But how many of us talking about be good? See, there's a big difference between do good and be good. What we really need with our education system, find a way how we can teach our people be good rather than do good. When you be good, your qualities change. You want to maintain your quality. You see your qualities. That because you be good. In order for you to do that, you need to see yourself first. That's why this satipatthana, mindfulness or introspection is so valuable. Because that gives an opportunity to see yourself as it is. Most of us are clouded. And we need to push that dark cloud somewhere, which is unlearning. And then you will see the light. Still myself, I'm trying to do it. I'm trying to practice it. More I practice, I see the light. Because I'm pushing out the dark cloud. And it gives me to learn more and more the new things. Well, I may be incorrect. Some of the new things, I get the new things, but they are not 100% correct. But I have the opportunity to value them and see what it is and question myself. And when you try to question yourself, again, it goes with the introspection. Even when you talk about the mind, we have three things: perception, intellect, and emotion. So the mind is combined with these three things. That's what the Buddha taught us. Not only the Buddha, even the Sigmund Freud came that path. Not that far, but he introduced to the West like id, ego, superego. So those are very familiar in the West. But what is not familiar in the West is what Buddha's real teaching is. If we can find a way to let them know, I think we can together teach our kid and someone else's kid, which I mean is another country kid, what is this proper education system is. So knowing the do good versus be good, if we can find a mechanism in our education system, I think that might be the best way for us to start. New system.
The new system, the system change within ourselves. We're having a very interesting conversation with Dr. Gamini Hewawasam. We'll cross over for a short commercial break right now. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
The People's Platform.
Companies play better politics than the politicians of today.
We are not supposed to play with the people's expectation. Then it will be a huge disaster.
When you're bankrupt and when you're going to bankruptcy, two different.
The grandfather is saying it is going to take this long. What does he know?
It's about the lack of sense of humor in Sri Lankans.
Issues that matter the most. Unfiltered discussions. Real answers. Face to face. Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on TV1.
TV1. TV for life.
What's happening in Sri Lanka and what's happening around the world. During the past few days, we, as Newsfirst, we reported a lot about what's happening in Arugambe, and today a lot of tourism authorities have expressed their concerns about the threats that were released by the embassies in Sri Lanka. And to get to know more about what's happening around Sri Lanka, with me right now is the producer of the day of the English desk, Tinal Tilakaratna. Tinal, so what's happening today in Sri Lanka?
So, Bulmil, as we all know, recently a security threat was issued to Arugambe. Well, today the Sri Lanka Tourism Alliance, they've raised questions whether this recent security alert by these embassies was some sort of a cruel joke to Sri Lanka's tourism industry. So we bring more updates on this story, many more updates on our news bulletin, and as well as that, tomorrow is the LPTA elections, for the Pradesh Sabha elections. So we'll be following on that as well. So our viewers have to be tuned in for primetime news.
Okay, thank you so much, Sinal. So, we as Newsfirst, we have been reporting about the Gaza conflict and a lot of things happening around the world. So, on the other side, we have Juad Abdin. So, Juad, what's happening around the world?
Yes, Budbin, now we do know that leaders of BRICS gathered in Kazan for the summit that took place there. And now during this summit, the Secretary of Sri Lanka's Minister of Foreign Affairs requested for the official membership of Sri Lanka for BRICS as well. Now, a special highlighting factor that took place during this summit was that President Vladimir Putin, the President of Russia, said that the Middle East was on the verge of a full-scale war. Now, he was emphasizing on the situation in the Middle East, which we as Newsfirst have been closely following as well. And at the same time, the President of Palestine as well thanked the Russian President for bringing the picture during this summit and for emphasizing the situation that is happening in Palestine and especially in the Middle East. Now, more details on this story, a comprehensive report will be available on our news bulletin tonight. So stay tuned and we'll see what we have.
Okay, thanks so much, Juad. We'll bring to you more news, more stories from the local arena and also the international arena from our news bulletin. Stay tuned with Newsfirst.
TV1. TV for life.
President reaffirms safety of tourists and citizens. Tourism Alliance condemns embassy security advisories as a cruel joke on Sri Lanka's tourism industry. Are security advisories part of an international conspiracy? Association of Small and Medium-Sized Tourism Entrepreneurs questions motive. Was there a hidden network behind the Easter attacks? Sunanda Deshapriya reveals new insights. Sri Lanka A thrash Pakistan A to reach final of Emerging Teams Asia Cup.
TV1. TV for life.
We live in a world of progress. But what if progress isn't reaching everyone? Millions of Sri Lankans struggle without access to clean water, safe roads and bridges to a better life. But you have reached out. You have touched their lives. Thank you, Sri Lanka, for making Gammadda the most impactful rural development movement in our nation. Gammadda, for the people, by the people.
The People's Platform.
Welcome back to the People's Platform. I'm in conversation with Dr. Gamini Hewawasam. Dr. Hewawasam, this introspection that we've been speaking about, in practical terms, now when I asked you earlier, just before the program, I asked you how often should we take this step back and look at ourselves and be introspective. And I was very surprised when you said all the time. And then, of course, it made sense. I mean, I was thinking, okay, once a week, sit down, look at oneself. But you say practice it all the time. Expand on this.
This teaching is not my teaching or any other Buddhist monk teaching or any of my professors' teaching. These are teaching from the Buddha. What he said is you need to be conscious 24/7. That's why these techniques come to play. I know we cannot do it overnight. It has to go step by step. That's why you see these workshops called Bhavana, and they have named it different way. But what everybody is trying to figure it out how they can apply to themselves. Some are correct techniques, some are not correct techniques, some are we cannot rate them. There are many ha-hos going around the world, not only in Sri Lanka. I have access to the US. People are trying to figure it out. I mean, like even you take a company like Apple or Google. They have given a higher priority for mindfulness practices or mindfulness workshop. They are inviting these coaches or gurus to come and talk to their employees. As an example, SAP, and like 6,000 employees per year needs to go through this mindfulness training. Right? So
really?
Yeah. So what they do is they bring these coaches and ask them to come up with workshops. So what I recommend is we can focus our breathe. So we have a breath. We do breathing unconsciously or consciously. So it happens, right? So if we can find a way to give an attention to our breathe. There are different techniques as introduced by different people around the world. But if we can go back to the original teaching of Buddha, which comes from Anapanasati Sutta, I think we will find a way to train ourselves, because these beautiful teachings are right here. But if you ask this question from the FOB coaches who lives in US, he will give you a different interpretation, which he or she learned from different coaches from Thailand or from India or within US. But my point here is, well, as a Sri Lankan, we all have access to this original teaching. If you're asking me what is the proper technique, I should say go to Anapanasati Sutta. It gives you all the proper technique. We in this country have access to these beautiful teachings. We can get the best out of the best. But Americans, they cannot. They don't have this. That's why I was so surprised when 2 years ago when some people claim this country as bankrupt, because they focus only the finance aspect of the situation without paying attention to it. But right now, these techniques are the most valuable thing a Sri Lankan has.
And what about teaching this to the world? Now, we have many things which the world doesn't have, or many countries don't have. I mean, if you take our tourism and various other aspects, we have so much here. But it strikes me that this, what we've been discussing, without the religious aspect of it, it's something that we can teach the world.
This is why I always keep saying we do not need IMF money. After my PhD research, and I went heavily on this particular subject, and as a result, I am in process of starting a research center in Mihintale. That is for the introspective leadership. It's an action research. I would like to invite people around the world to come to Mihintale and spend like a week or a couple of days giving an opportunity for them to understand who they are. Because we call, I think even the new government is heavily focusing on attracting tourism. Of course, yes, because it's such a beautiful country. But remember, if we're trying to sell our beaches, we cannot win. Maldives beaches are much better than this. Hawaii is much better than this. If we're trying to sell our climate, I don't think we're going to win, because there are many other countries around the world who has better climate. If we're going to sell the sun, I don't think that will work out. So we need to find out the uniqueness what we have. The uniqueness what we have is this teaching, wonderful teaching. That's why the research center is very important. Then people around the world can say, hey, there is a place in Sri Lanka where still the original teaching is existing. We can easily go to Apple, we can easily go to the Google, We can easily go to the Intel, we can easily go to the Facebook, those companies, and introduce what this beautiful teaching is, because they already are trying to use it for their people, for their organization, and it works. But we can do more than that, letting them know, giving them more access to this wonderful teaching. So we need this research center, either from my side or from your side or from academia or from government. Somebody has to come here. Somebody has to come with that initiative and let world know what these beautiful techniques we have. It's not only the teaching, it comes with the technique. Technique is you should just try by yourself, period. This I cannot give it to you, or you cannot give it to me. This is something we try to understand who we are using, going through these practices. As an example, Anapana Sutta. So we pay attention to our breath, and there is a way to do it. And then those techniques is not existing anywhere else, only in this country. I could proudly say it's only in this country. That's the beauty.
Dr. Gamini, I get what you're saying. And we as Sri Lankans, I think all Sri Lankans know that we have this depth of knowledge, which goes back thousands of years. But we don't practice it. Where did we lose this? Where did we lose touch with this deep learning and become so frivolous?
I think what happened to us was we were so quick to be westernized.
Okay.
So we were so quick to be westernized, and still we are trying on that way. So I'm someone who live in USA more than the time I spend in Sri Lanka. I feel so sad. I don't like it. Not really at all. Because when I turn back and see the beauty of this country, you cannot find it from anywhere else. So what happened to us? I think we became too westernized too quickly. And it's okay to get the good stuff from anywhere. I'm not complaining because I have done it. But don't forget the beauty of what you have already.
Interesting indeed, what we have. So it's in marketing terms, it's a SWOT analysis, isn't it? Your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, the threats, all that, and you are looking at yourself.
Very correct. And you asked about the system change. If the education system can teach all of us as a SWOT analyst, hey, this is the time for all the citizens to go through this SWOT analysis, right? That will give an opportunity for us to figure it out, what happened to us, where we did the mistake, how we going to turn this around. That's what we really needed to understand. And that's what we really needed to talk when you talk about system change. We need to open up these tools to the society. Because right now, I think society is clueless. They just hear, right? They just hear do good. Like you take any political party, no one is saying that we are bad. Everybody is saying we are the best and we do this and we do this and we do this. How many of our politicians are saying, hey, be good, and you show your quality saying, look at me, this is how you be good rather than do good? I think that's the difference we need to identify and let society know. Then they will find, they figure it out who's telling right and who's telling wrong.
Now, we've been speaking about the individual. But what about our leaders? Because now we have a new set of leaders coming in. We'll know in about 3 weeks' time, members of parliament, cabinet ministers, and so on. But if they are of the old mold, where they have forgotten what we have, we're just going to go around in circles again. We might develop the economy and get back to, the economic progress and all that, that's fine. But we're not going to advance as a society, are we? And so how do we get our leaders to start thinking in this way as well?
Well, I think we all are leaders and we all wanted to be leaders. The question here, who is going to be the supernormal leader? That is the difference. Even in during this election time, as a citizens, we have a duty to figure it out who this person going to be supernormal leader. We all are leaders. That's what everybody's talking about. But I give you a hint. Again, this is coming from our Buddha's teaching. We know Arya Ashtangika Marga. In English, it's an 8-step process. It's a process. It's an 8-step process. You start with harmonious perspective. You train yourself to see things in 360 degrees. And then harmonious visualization, which means if you have done something incorrect, you take a U-turn and go in the right direction. And then comes the harmonious speech, right? When we both talk, we cannot create a conflict. If a leader creating a conflict, he's not a good leader. Leader should understand how to make his speech without creating a conflict. So those techniques has given to us by Buddha. That's why I'm telling how beautiful this country is. If we can train ourselves, if our leaders can train themselves, go through this process of 8-step. By the way, mindfulness is the 7th step of 8-step process.
Oh, I see.
So before you jump into the mindfulness, you need to start with number 1, which is harmonious perspective. If we can train our leaders with this particular beautiful technique or beautiful teaching, I think that's where the supernormal leaders come to play. And then the citizen can get an opportunity to understand, oh, this particular leader has these qualities, and the leader is cultivating the qualities. Then the follower sees that and follow the leader. We needed to have leaders with good qualities. Then the citizens will follow them. That's where the society going to be good.
Now, that's an interesting point because in many countries, society, the people follow their leaders or follow role models. Now, in Sri Lanka, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of role models. We have a few good, excellent sportsmen and women, but apart from that, we seem to look up to our political leaders who have gone down the wrong path for the most part.
So I think what happened was, like you said, the sportsman. Let's take one of the best sportsmen we have in our cricket field, right? We have a lot of those.
Yeah.
But when you go and learn those people, imagine how many hours they have put into practice. And early in the morning, they need to wake up, go to the gym or work out and do the practice throughout the day.
Discipline.
Discipline, not a day or 2 or a week or a month, years of training. Years of training. At the end, what will happen is we see one of the best cricketers. Like, now go back to a politician. What type of training you go through?
All the wrong types of training, probably, if any at all. Yes. Yeah, so that's the sad part of it.
That's the sad part. So it is so easy for all of us to become a leader overnight. But we cannot be a good sportsman overnight. It has a training and the process to go through. So that's why I said we need to find out who can be the supernormal leader. Then you have to go through those 8-step process. Again, the 8-step process, it's not for either daytime or night time. It's 24/7 throughout your lifetime. That's what the supernormal leaders are. Now we have a difficulty to figure it out who they are. Do we have one of them?
Well, that's a very loaded question. I'll be looking at the nomination list for the election in a fresh perspective after this conversation. Certainly, because we tend to look at what's the experience and corruption or no corruption and things like that. but this is an entirely new perspective.
Thank you. So that's what we need to see, the qualities of these leaders, leadership qualities. We call them leadership qualities. So I ask my citizens to look these leadership qualities when you select your next leader.
Now, Dr. Gamini, next month in Chicago, there is the International Leadership Association's annual conference, I believe, and you are giving a speech and doing some workshops there. Can you tell us a bit about it? What are you going to teach these global leaders?
I was fortunate enough to be at the International Leadership Association 26th annual conference. This time it is held in Chicago in month of November. So I have a 2-hour session, and happily I will be talking about mindfulness in leadership based on Buddha's original teaching without any religious bias into it.
Interesting indeed. And the International Leadership Association, is it more corporate leaders or academia?
It's a combination, because it's the organization started in the US. The issue there is in academia, you do all this research. You come with theories and tell people, hey, corporate, this is the right way of doing the business. But there is a gap between your theories and the practice itself. So this international associations, global association, what they does is they bring academia and the practitioners, scholars and the practitioners together. You have the people who come up with new theories, and then you have vice presidents, CEOs of these bigger companies. They get together and talk to each other and try to see how they can apply these theories into their daily life or the corporate life. That's what it's happened. So mostly it's academia and corporate combination.
Interesting indeed. And is it mainly Western people, US and European?
No, it's a global event. You get people from around the world.
Okay, yeah. And I hope there'll be people from Sri Lanka apart from you.
This is my third time that I'll be giving speeches at ILA, International Leadership Association. But for the last 2 times actually, I have never seen a Sri Lankan there, because we get the profile of those attendees. These are like thousands, but it's easy for us to figure it out whether you are from Sri Lanka based on your surname.
Oh, absolutely.
I always say, whenever I go for international conferences, the first thing is see, is there anyone from Sri Lanka? So I do check that, but unfortunately I have not met anybody yet. And I welcome all these academia or universities. This event is open for anyone, especially if you are interested about learning about leadership. That's the place to go.
Interesting indeed. And you mentioned that you are setting up an institute in Mihintale. But what more can be done in Sri Lanka to make full use of the knowledge that was left here thousands of years ago?
The knowledge is here. The issue is that we are not utilizing it. But as an example, Apple or Google, the companies are using this. And they have mindfulness department within the organization. So I challenge Sri Lanka, Sri Lankan leaders or Sri Lankan corporations, do you have those? Why Apple and Google is having? Because those are the Fortune 100 companies. Their profit is in a peak level. To run a company like that, you need these qualities of leaders, the qualityness of leaders. That's why they keep utilizing these training workshop for their organization. But for us, we have the teaching, but we do not pay attention to create a mechanism to utilize it. Teachings are here. The problem is we don't see it.
Just like we don't see Sri Lanka as it really is.
Yes, exactly. Because we are more westernized.
So we're taking the opinions of our political leaders and Western financiers about our country without sitting back and saying, wait a minute, this is not what Sri Lanka is. We know what Sri Lanka is.
That is why we need a different type of a leadership to argue with those type of international leaders, to let them know, hey, we have something that you don't have. Come here and practice and experience. They will come and experience this happily because all of us wants to reduce the stress. This teaching is to find the calmness. When you are calm, you are more productive and you can make very profitable decisions. Gain the calmness is the key here. Because we all having a stressful life, no doubt on it. It doesn't matter whether you live in Sri Lanka or US, the stress is similar. So if we have this wonderful technique or teaching, please utilize it. That's the message we can give it to other countries and create a mutual relationship.
Now, don't you think that it's tragic that millions of Sri Lankans, even at this time, are trying to go overseas, not out of opportunity, like you did. You went for your studies and you made a new life and became a success, but out of desperation. Millions have, we don't even know how many have left in the last 2 years, but millions of passports have been issued by the immigration department. But none of them are actually thinking about what we have here.
Well, I cannot say to anyone not to go abroad because myself, I did it. But what I'm telling everybody is this is an open world. It's a free world. You have the freedom to move from place to a place. We do not need to be framed ourselves. But what I'm requesting from my dear Sri Lankan is, if you really want to go abroad, please do go, but go with Sri Lanka. If you can go with Sri Lanka, I don't think we have a problem. The problem, what I see here is people are leaving to Sri Lanka. If they can take Sri Lanka with them, I think we may have a different society here.
When you say Sri Lanka, you mean all those wonderful qualities, all that knowledge that we have here.
We have here, and then you create the relationship. Like in myself, I started my fine finish engineering company 20 years ago. I did this online, actually. Those days we didn't have Zoom. But I was a CEO from that time onwards. Every Sunday I used to call my company over here and I share my knowledge with these people and I build it up. We started with 3 people. Right now we have more than 150 people. How I did was because I love this country. I want to give something back to this country because I know the value. This is the country who made myself. So I have that intention within myself for the past 20 years. So I'm requesting other Sri Lankan who left Sri Lanka, they can live in US, they can live in UK, they can live in Australia or any country. But make sure that you are doing your part, which is giving back. That's what we need. Then we don't need to cry for World Bank or IMF or no. Because we have bank. The Sri Lanka has bank already. The problem is those entities are outside. We need to create a link. I think those people will even listen. That's why we need the proper leadership too, to tackle them, to go and talk to them in a language where they will say, we didn't come earlier, now we wanted to do it. I'm not saying to you come physically, but with your thoughts, with your capacities, with your knowledge, you can do it.
Now, I'm afraid we are almost out of time in what has been an eye-opening conversation, I must say. Dr. Gamini, when you go out onto the street, what we see is chaos. The way people drive, the way people talk to each other, it's chaotic. But at this point in time, the country is at a situation where change is welcome. It's just that people don't know what they need to change. They still think it's just the politicians. But do you see our having the ability to change ourselves and change society, where there will be an obvious change in society, where perhaps a year from now, when you go out onto the streets, this mindfulness, this introspection would have manifested itself in society?
I think this is the time for it, and I am experienced. This time I came before the election, so I'm leaving on Sunday. After the election, for the last couple of weeks, when I go out and talk to people in the street or in my company or with my relations, most of them, what I heard from them is, well, we have a new government. I think we have to do our duty now. We need to change ourselves. I hear that word. I'm so impressed. So we have an opportunity. People are into the understanding the gravity of it. So now, if we can try to keep this momentum, we just started, and people are open up for new ideas now. They keep saying, oh, we have a new government, this is what it is going to happen. So they have this excitement. And at the same time, they know we also need to change. That's what we need to bank. That's what we need to utilize.
And
I see that.
Is it also our responsibility?
It is our responsibility. That's why leaders need to play a bigger role, letting them know each individual responsibilities. You see a garbage collector or a truck driver, and we need to reach out to them and say, hey, are you willing to change yourself? This is what it should be, right? And then go to a hospital, talk to the nurse, go to the doctor's office, or go to the bank and talk to the officer. Any department, doesn't matter whether private or a public. Now we have to open up this conversation. We need to let them know what you are expecting of this system change. How does this system change should start? So if we can implement it, saying it should start within yourself, that's where we're going to get the beautiful society.
Very interesting. And I'm sure that our audience would have learned a lot over the past 1 hour. But I am afraid we are out of time. My thanks to Dr. Gamini Hewawasam, who I hope will return back to this program next time you're in Sri Lanka. Please do give us a call. We'd love to hear your further thoughts.
Thank you very much.
And of course, also your impressions of how Sri Lanka would hopefully have changed by that time. And thank you to you for watching. Don't go away, because the news is coming up next. Have a great evening.